Wrapping up, Dear Apple, I think you should. This is Mac Voices. Today's Mac Voices is supported by Mac Voices After Dark. Uncensored, off-topic, and always off the wall. Mac Voices After Dark is available as a benefit to our Patreon subscribers. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 3 and the final part in a Mac Voices live discussion about Dear Apple, I think you should. When we gave this idea to the panel, not only did they show up in quite a large number, as you can tell by the panel itself, but also with an amazingly diverse set of ideas about what they would like to see Apple's next move or moves be. And they ranged from the 30,000-foot level right down to different ideas that are very, very personal. So this wraps up the discussion, but I have an idea we will be doing this again in the future every so often because it has generated so many interesting ideas and interesting discussions. But for now, let's wrap it up. Here's the panel. Okay, so I want to catch up here and bring the chat room in on a couple pieces that we've gone past. Cletus brought up the fact that he thinks that some of those personal projects, whatever that means, have landed in the accessibility area of the OSs. I don't know exactly where he's coming from with that, but he said that, which I think is an interesting point. Bridget says Apple has to protect themselves. You know, we have choices where to work, and I personally would love to work for Apple. Okay, that's fine. Webb brought up the fact that Apple as a corporation must be careful about making forward-looking statements because it could influence the valuation.
Right.
God knows I don't want to be the Apple employee that, you know, says one thing and causes the valuation to go one way or the other.
God forbid the richest company in the world loses enough money to clear out, you know, some small country's national debt.
All right. Well, except it's not just Apple. It's also, you know, the people who own Apple shares and things like that. What about going the other way, though? I mean, instead of thinking, well, I'm never allowed to talk again because I'm going to work for Apple, what if you treat it as it's a limited time only thing, right? Like, I think Michael Gartenberg is back to talking to people about stuff. He was on one of my shows years ago. He went from working from, who did he work for? Was it NPD? Wasn't NPD.
Was
anyway,
it Forrester?
Juniper. Okay, so he went from working for Jupiter to working for Apple, and he was like gone at that point. The only thing he talked about publicly was how he couldn't find a good bagel because he was living out in Cupertino now, and he came there from New York, right?
One must have priorities. I agree with him on this, yes.
But he's back to talking now. I mean, and I think about the people who because the people who work for Facebook, that thing, if it ends up being a good thing, is going to end up stealing everybody's information and being folded into Facebook. If Google buys a thing that looks really great, I hope he didn't like it too much because in a year to a year and a half from now, it might go under because it's not doing anything for Google as far as Google is concerned. For Apple to have its employees be focused on Apple, I mean, you might be able to look at that as a limited time only thing because when they leave, I mean, not only does every door open up for them, but they're now free to work on that thing that they wanted to, and they got that sweet, sweet Apple money you were talking about that they can use to put towards it.
I do think that with that, though, being able to contribute to the entire ecosystem helps Apple as well. Like, I mean, I'm a Python developer, so I tend to think in the world of Python mostly, but the creator of the Python programming language works at Microsoft. Used to work at Dropbox, decided to retire, decided to unretire because that was boring. And then Microsoft said, hey, you can work for us and do whatever you want. I'm not saying that that's what he does, but I mean, essentially, when you're that person, you can. All of my friends that I see that have built these amazing projects are now all of a sudden Microsoft employees. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I say, oh no, they're paying me to work on these things. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. That makes sense because what's good for everyone in the ecosystem is also good for Microsoft. It helps Microsoft's development. It helps their voice. And I get like they can't necessarily have everybody podcasting, ranting about, you know, the latest and greatest in the Apple secret labs, but they could be developing, you know, I don't know, machine learning algorithms that stops cameras in, you know, Louisiana from falsely detecting black people, for crimes that they didn't commit. They care about accessibility. They care about diversity. They could be saying, we're going to put our money where our mouth is, and we're going to invest in these things that will ultimately make our products better.
Like I said, I think there's there's a little bit of ground for Apple to give that would not hurt Apple in any way, and there's a little bit of ground for people to give that would not hurt the people in any way. And I think the middle ground is somewhere in between where Apple is now and where we all are on the outside. Like I think Apple could lighten up a little and it'd be all right. A little. Not a ton, but a little, and it'd be all right.
Okay, but let me give you, this is not my best analogy, but it's one that I use frequently, okay? I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and they decided, okay, we're going to do casual. We're going to go casual, and we're going to have business casual, and then we're going to have casual Fridays. And they had to stop doing it. They eventually got around to just saying having to publish the definitions of it, because when you said people could go business casual, people showed up in yoga pants and sandals. Okay, which is, I'm sorry, it's not appropriate for a business. When you told them they could have casual Friday, they showed up in pajamas.
Or and no pants.
Well, at times, Frank, you're not far off in places, and the sad thing is that you have to put up those boundaries. And honestly, I think if you look at the Apple's DNA, and now we'll go back to Steve Jobs and some of what happened to Apple early on. I think there were some real good reasons that they invested in secrecy, and they became just a little bit paranoid, and that's now part of their DNA.
Yeah.
And could it be opened up? Yeah. But is there a real loss? Jay, I respect what you're saying. I'm not sure that I completely agree with you that the benefit is worth the potential cost to Apple.
Possible legal costs as well.
Depending on what is said and what shareholder decides to get, a wild hair
class action suits
sue something. Think about how many class action suits, with these idiots we have out there that, are just completely useless. All they do is make money for the attorney. Gesundheit. Jim?
I think Jay's point is that Apple takes it to a whole nother level beyond what other big companies in the industry do, like Google and Microsoft and Facebook and Twitter. And so I think Jay's point is, maybe Apple could dial it back more to where most of the, that's not that everything should be a free for all by any means, but I think it goes back to Steve Jobs, is where Kelly was mentioning how Apple's stories are big news, but part of that I think it is because they are so secret. So and that secrecy goes back to before they were it goes back to when they were even a failing company, and then that's just part of Steve's DNA, is everything's got to be a big secret, and so maybe that can't be separated out. But I think it's, I like Jay's point. I think that's a good request for Tim.
At this point, we're way over time, and I want to make sure we give everybody a shot at getting something in. So I'm just sort of working my way back up my screen. Warren, how about you? What would you do? What would you tell Apple to do?
Me and Kelly took what I was going to say first, which was the HomeKit. They really missed the boat on that one. Just real quick, I set up a Homebridge over last week, and I was playing with it, and it's awesome, but it's terrible, but it's still awesome. And it's like, you just want, they started late with it, but they're still not pushing it. And I just want to see more devices available. I want to see a reason to replace all my other non-HomeKit devices with a HomeKit device at this point.
Yeah, because I set up Homebridge because now I can tell my arm to open the garage door and it just works. And
that's what I did too.
And there's nothing that can do that in HomeKit now.
Right, but it's not perfect. I had it controlling my car, but all of a sudden it turns it off and on and off and on all the time, and identified my family every time it did that. So I turned that off. But yeah, so I mean, they need to step up the HomeKit because there's just not a lot of devices for it. And the other thing is I would like Tim to call Elon back, and because the Tesla needs some more car play integration or something more integrated with Apple, I think. Only because I have a Tesla and I want CarPlay.
Selfless to the end, Warren. Selfless to the end.
Well, I could be all ethical like Ken and who else was Jay. We're talking about, how I can't comment on their, on their policies, and they seem pretty good with the with diversity and everything like that. I'm sure they could be better with that kind of stuff. But I'm just going to be selfish and want the technology that works for me.
Okay, well, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. And it would be interesting if Apple and Tesla could combine some of their respective know-hows into things. But
I almost feel like for the self-driving car industry, I almost feel like there should be like one huge nonprofit top of level of this, because it's playing with people's lives, and everybody has their own technologies coming in, and it really needs to be like
some sort of.
They need to all work together. They all need to like know. I almost feel like they should all share the technology they have with the self-driving, because
that's part of the reason why electric cars are still struggling, is because everybody has their own standards.
Have their own standards, and that's great. But when self-driving cars are a thing, and the Ford does one thing, and Dodge does another, they might not work together. So just for to get this thing going, I think they need to kind of work together a little bit more on these kind of things.
Yeah, well, but welcome to the capital markets, the free markets.
Yeah.
Somebody that builds a better mousetrap at least has a shot instead of being frozen out.
Yep.
Jim, what wisdom do you have for Apple?
I wish Ken was still on here, because after he talked, I realized mine is kind of the opposite of
Ken is still here.
Ken, Jeff. Jeff.
They look so much alike.
Yeah, no.
What have you heard?
Because Jeff wanted Apple to delight him, right? And I just don't want them to piss me off, basically.
Well, that's two ends of the spectrum there, Jim.
Yeah.
There you go, Chuck. This show has it all.
Yeah. In one of those universes, everybody wears goatees.
So yeah, before he said that, what I was going to say is, Tim, please renew focus on software quality. So that maybe that would delight me. There's lots of bugs that just keep going on and on, never get fixed, and it seems like more and more. And I see that both as a user and as a developer. Apple makes bugs that make my program have problems, and then my users contact me and are mad at me because of problems that are really Apple problems. I wish they would work on their documentation, especially in my case, developer documentation, which, you get any group of developers together and ask them about that. And Apple used to have fantastic documentation.
Where did it go?
And yeah, exactly. Like,
oh no, it's all still there, but it's all 10-year-old documentation. Yeah.
Not only do they not make new documentation, they've been busily removing the old documentation, and it's vanished. So some of us have caches of PDF files that we fortunately downloaded, but if you're a new developer, I don't know what you do. The stuff's gone, and plus they moved all the URLs around. So anytime it's like, go to an Apple website for documentation, and find links on old forums like Stack Overflow or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, well, that documentation isn't there anymore. So that's really annoying. The UI stuff, that Brittany was talking about, and just in general, seems like they're, Big Sur in general, like, what the heck? I think they should get off the, once per year rat race. Oh, we've got to do a major thing. I think that is just killing them. And, the Apple people I know, it just feels like they're just on a hamster wheel. And, in fact, I think they should de-emphasize WWDC. Not that they shouldn't have it, but for one thing, it seems like that they think that's documentation. Oh, we made it. We did a talk at WWDC. That's it. We don't need to write any documentation or, just go find the video. That's not documentation, guys. And I don't know if this is software quality, but could you get the scams out of the App Store? I mean, come on. That is a travesty. What's going on there? And it seems to me the solution is, look how this, I don't know what this guy's name is. I can't pronounce it, but I'm sure you've all seen how he's been finding all these various scams. Well, if he can find them, why can't Apple find them? And, they ought to have a team that's like, if something gets in the top 1,000 in revenue, we're going to take a closer look. Yeah, sure, there's a million apps, but who cares about an app that makes $10 a year? But if some app's pulling in $1 million a year, Apple should take a look at it and say, is this really legit? And do we, and you have to think, oh, we like, it's $1 million a year app or whatever, and Apple's getting 300,000 you got to think they like getting that money. Or, why aren't they, why do they want their name to be associated with scamming people? So, yeah, Tim, stop pissing me off.
I liked the
great conversation opener.
I liked the stretch where we had like the release and then the bolt tightening release. I always called it. So like we had Sierra and High Sierra, and we had Lion and Mountain Lion, and we had like, we're gonna give you some new stuff here, and then we're gonna refine it. And like going from one to the next in that way, like if you're gonna make us do it every year, could we just go back to the TikTok model? Like we did with phones for a while, where we had the phone and then we had the S phone. Like revolution, then evolution. And like, if we can bounce between the two, like, I feel like that would be a lot better. That's a thing that I hear from a lot of people I know who are developers, is the frustration about like, it totally works now. And like, it totally works now. And it's going to be a great 3 months because Dub is breathing down my neck, and we're going to get a whole new operating system. And I have to spend my summer, because there are developers who like to go outside, and some of them like to go outside in the summertime, and all of them have had to give that up. And they get to spend all summer making sure that thing is going to work on the new operating system, and then sometimes it doesn't, and it's hard and it sucks and everything's terrible and like nobody's happy. So yeah, can we just go back to the Bolt Titan release? It's much nicer that way.
That's interesting. I mean, I think they've kind of put themselves in a place now where, again, like I said at the very beginning, they don't have to do anything because they're Apple, but they've kind of put themselves in a place now where they have said, we're doing a new release every year. I kind of wish they hadn't, but I can also understand. I mean, you go to that 11th month without a release, or 13th month without a release, and all of a sudden it's going to be, well, what's going on at Apple? Oh no, everything stopped. They're not developing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sometimes they're like last year when they're like, oh, we made the biggest visual change ever. I have a feeling that Brittany and I were in the same place at that point. I was just saying the F word, because all visual changes mean to me is like, oh, all you've done is change, how it looks. And now I have to relearn all of that. And am I going to like it? Am I not going to like it? And why do I? And
if it works the same, why did you do this to me? Is where I usually end up with that.
Right. It feels like a justification for, well, we have to change things every year, so we're going to change things every year. But
all I could see was less noise, the cognitive benefits for everyone.
Less noise. Yeah. Oops.
Well, and it was great for a minute. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think
that's all right.
That's.
Yeah. Okay. Am I right, Guy? I think you're the last one. Is there anybody I missed? Because I was trying to keep track, and then you guys kept shifting the order around.
Checklist.
We already know, guys. Guy's just gonna say he wants Apple to make a microphone.
No, I don't. I actually don't.
Well, is it going to be the thing where you take the little device and it goes into all the other devices? The thing that was not a dumb terminal but was real close?
Yeah, no, it won't be. We talked about that last week.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by our Patreon subscribers and MacVoices After Dark. Ever wonder what happens before the MacVoices live shows? Or what happens when the show ends or after the live feed closes? That's where MacVoices After Dark comes in. If you are a Patreon supporter at any level, you get access to the video of our off-camera conversations. Uncensored, unedited, and always off the wall. It's a small thank you to our Patreon supporters who want to peek behind the curtain. Become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/MacVoices. And thanks to everyone who supports the show.
The laptop dock, yes.
What I'd like to see, and it kind of goes all the way back to the very beginning of this conversation, is better podcasting tools. Now, Apple, for a very short period of time, had some, they weren't terrific, but they were okay tools within GarageBand that were specific to podcasting. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I think we're just going to take those out, even though there's really no reason for us to do so. We're just going to take them out anyway. And I think about some of the tools that I've seen over the years to make podcasting, and I'm not talking about the after show stuff. I'm talking about the during show stuff. And a company like Rogue Amoeba has a lot of those tools. They have Audio Hijack, and they have Loopback, and they have what's the other? Farrago
and Sound Source and
exactly. And
yeah.
At one point there was a tool that was in development that almost did all of those things, called Ubercaster by Pleasant Software for the People or something like that. It was this really weird company name.
Oh yeah.
Back in like 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And
Whatever happened to that?
It died on the vine because Apple basically made some major changes in the operating system, and some of the stuff that the program did,
that was like sandboxing, I think, killed it.
It couldn't make the leap into the next operating system. Now, it still worked for the previous one, but that's not a business model that you can hang your hat on. So, and there are some other tools that sort of do some of that today. You've got the standalone app from Spreaker Studio, that does some of that. But what I'd really like to see is an all-in-one application for podcast creation that includes having bumpers and external audio that's queued up and ready to go whenever you want, like radio automation, but in such a way that you can easily just take all of the different audio sources, all of the various video sources that you may have. You may have 2 or 3 different cameras hooked up. And right now, most of the tools to switch from one camera to another is based on hardware. Well, why? If you have audio sources going into your computer and you have video sources going into your computer, all of these various devices and sources have a path all of their own that's unique. And you can set up software in such a way that you can say, well, I want this, and I want this, and now I want this. And there's really not much out there in the way of software that does that. And I would love to see Apple jump into something like that with the same vigor that they did when they created Final Cut X or Final Cut 10, where they took something that they already had and said, okay, we're going to make big major changes to it. And it's not great right now, but it's going to develop into something that is just terrific. And you're going to love it at the end. And it took a while with Final Cut 10 going from Final Cut Pro. And I think that because Apple has their hooks into the operating system in the way that they do, because who else could, that they could come up with something like this. And right now it doesn't exist that I know of. But that's what I want. That's what I would love to see Apple do. Because right now, in order to record my podcast, I got to start up Loopback, and I have to start up Hindenburg, and I have to start up Farrago, and I have to get Gaz on via Stream Deck or StreamYard. And then I have to go into YouTube and make sure that that's there, and then make sure that the link from YouTube to my own personal site is there. And it's like, God. And if I forget
you're not
one
standing
step,
on one foot, then you have to do the whole thing over again.
Yeah. And you forget one step, the whole thing is just effed. So yeah, I would like to see some easier tools for all of that.
Wouldn't the problem be is if they did all that themselves, a lot of people would start saying, hey, monopolization, and the government would be right in on it.
then somebody else come up with the tool. Then I don't care who does it.
I like third parties coming up with the tools. I mean, it's like this, when they started complaining that they took away the charging brick for the iPhone, I didn't care. I thought, hey, this is great for Anchor, and that's what I end up using.
Yeah,
because I think they make a better product than that.
And you can do some of this stuff with Spreaker Studio. You can do some of this stuff with some of the podcasting tools out there. Something along the lines of, and if you want to see what Ubercaster used to be, just look it up. It's UBER Caster, and it was amazing software for its time. Remember, we're talking 2005 to 2007. So, the UI is going to look a little funky, but if you think about it in terms of what the UIs were like at that time versus what they are today, you could see where the progression between what it was then and what it could be now is just amazing. But that's really what I'd like to see is professional grade, easy to use automation software for podcasting.
So look, Apple gives you tools to make a movie for free on your computer. You get iMovie. Apple gives you tools to edit a podcast. Apple gives you tools to write a book. You get Pages, and you get, and you can make a record because, you can't do anything with podcasts in it anymore, but you get GarageBand for free with your computer, and you get the basic office tools that Apple has. You get all that stuff that Apple just hands you, so that out of the box with zero additional cost, you can do all kinds of things with your computer, given the stuff that they hand you as an out of the box installation, so to speak. And when you do that, why couldn't one of those things, instead of being record a guitar, be record my voice and edit my voice effectively, instead of just, GarageBand having music? Why wouldn't they just put the voice stuff back, or do what they did to everything else and go, this is now GarageBand X, and it does all these things, and one of the things that it does is podcasts, and you can have podcasts now and do all this and do all of those things like you could before. I don't think it would be very far. Honestly, I've been at this a really long time, and I remember that. That's why I remember Ubercaster. Yeah. And I remember I'm not updating to Lion because every podcaster I know is currently tearing their hair out. Look what happened to Ken. Every podcaster is tearing their hair out over trying to get the audio working on Lion. And so I'm not doing it. Guy knows what's up. So I'm no, that's not a good look for Kelly. I'll be over here, full Wookiee and just waiting it out. So I don't even remember if I ever actually had Lion installed on a machine because it was so screwed up with audio for so long. Yeah. So it would be very easy for Apple to hand us a tool that would allow us to basically the QuickTime recorder we already have, just put a couple of options around it. That's really what you're most of the way there. You've paved the road, just, paint some lines on it and that'd be great.
Yeah, well, you look at Ambrosia Software. Ambrosia Software used to have something that was very similar.
Wiretap Studio. It was the greatest thing.
And then Wiretap Studio Pro, and it was, and like you were saying, Kelly, a lot of people didn't upgrade to Lion because it broke that.
Yep.
And because Ambrosia Software didn't actually own the software, they just licensed out to the developers of that software. Yeah. And the developer didn't feel like fixing it. The program was gone forever.
So if you're listening to this show and you like to listen to other Apple podcasts, I would like for you to know right now that you should just go mail Paul Kafasis $10, because if it were not for Rogue Amoeba, and Paul Kafasis is the guy that runs Rogue Amoeba, if it were not for him, the bulk of us would not be able to do what we do right now. The end.
Or have even less hair.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet
for sharing
Rogue Amiga could make Ubercaster if they wanted to.
I have suggested that to Paul or something like that.
We hear from them all the time, don't upgrade. The thing doesn't work yet because we have to figure out how to get around the new security thing that Apple's doing. We're not trying to do anything bad, but it's catching us. And so in order for us to get the access to the system or the access to the kernel or the access to the hardware, because audio, for us to be able to do that, there are additional gyrations. So don't upgrade to Mavericks, don't upgrade to Mojave, don't upgrade to Catalina because we don't have it all nailed down yet.
Yeah, Ace. What they went through to get Ace working with Big Sur,
Apple,
was, I mean, it was a Herculean task to get Ace working with Big Sur, the audio capture engine.
Right.
Okay, so I got to jump in here because I feel like I hear everything you're saying. And believe it or not, I agree with everything you're saying.
But you're about to disagree.
Well, with one little tweak, and that is it's just all about you. Okay. And no matter, Kelly, I find you contradictory a little bit because a minute ago you just said, think about the real people. I think it was the phrase.
Yeah.
And the real people don't do podcasts. Regular people don't do podcasts.
But regular people
That wasn't the question, though.
Regular people could.
No. You're correct.
What's their appetite?
Enabling regular people to do the thing. Apple enables them to make a record. I mean, Billie Eilish won Grammys with the stuff that came with her computer and the Audio-Technica AT2020 USB microphone. Like, that's what they use.
And her brother.
I was going to say her brother is amazing.
But the hardware, like the outlay was a MacBook Pro and that microphone. The end. That's how they made that record. And why could they do that? Because GarageBand. And people who write books and publish them because they were able to use, iBook Publisher used Pages, which came with their computer, and iBook Publisher, which was part of Pages, to publish that book. Or whatever other thing like that comes with it. Like there's, I made a short film on my computer and I showed it to a room full of people. Like that's a thing that people do. So why couldn't one of those things be, I made a podcast and I hosted on my little iCloud publishing because Apple gave me some of that for free too. And now I can have the podcast about the thing that I do that's important that I want to tell other people about that I don't get the opportunity to do otherwise because I don't know anything about Rogue Amoeba because I've never met Paul Kafasis and don't know that he's lovely and don't know that he makes all the things that make it possible.
They tried that though. They put it into GarageBand and it was terrible. And it did not work at all.
Yeah. And that's why they need to do it, but good.
What they should, and this is the thing that I saw when Spotify said, hey, we're getting into the podcasting business. One of the things that they did that I really thought was interesting and genius was they bought Anchor. And Anchor was the company that was like, let's bring podcasting to everyone. Let's make it so easy for people to literally get on a mic, start talking. We will handle it going to all of the different services. We'll handle all of your advertising stuff. We'll do all that stuff for you. All you have to do is show up and talk. And I know Anchor had to evolve into that over time, but I could have seen easily Apple saying, hey, we want to help people who want to do podcasts. We want to make it so easy for them. We want to make it so that, Anchor does also own your stuff. I do understand that, and that's why I don't use Anchor. But Apple could have done something similar. They put out, what was it called? What was it, Clips? Clips could have, that app could have been something right there. I mean, that could have been TikTok, that could have been Anchor, that could have been a lot of different products, and instead it became an app that went into the Crapple folder.
Ken almost bit his mic on that, I think.
I was going to yell Clips, but Clips is still out there and Clips is still going. I can't help thinking maybe Apple could talk to a podcaster.
What?
That's crazy. Next they'll be making products.
Good night, everybody.
That are brighter futures.
Thank you, Ken.
A lot of
you just wrapped the show for me.
Podcasting on this panel.
I didn't.
Like he's a pro.
It was an accident, but I'm happy to do it.
I appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Guys, this has been a lot of fun. And I want to especially acknowledge the chat room because honestly, I couldn't quite keep up with there are multiple conversations going on over there. And Jay and I are having a big fight over Microsoft over there. And, that's just kind of fun. But I want to thank you all for sticking with us, chat room. And I want to thank you guys all. This is exactly what I knew would happen. And I'm so glad. Some of you went very specific and some of you went very broad. And I think that makes for a great conversation. So, but we want to go around the room, let everyone know where they can find you doing your own thing, whatever your own thing happens to be. And this time I'm going to fake everybody out and go from the bottom up on my screen. So that means Brittany Smith goes first.
Ooh, there are so many comments I won't make to that. Thank you so much for having me on, Chuck. I really had a good time.
It was fun. You can tell us what the comments were later. Where can folks find you?
Much later.
That's the After Dark show.
My sort of personal / nerdy Twitter is ADD Liberator, and that's where I do stuff. If you're looking for my website, it's conquer.consulting.
Perfect. Thanks for being here, Brittany. It was fun.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Jay Miller, the guy who, I don't know, I'm not sure who was taking what position in the chat room. We can argue that later.
Your secret Microsoft employee. I'm kidding. I don't work for Microsoft. You can find me. I do a show called The Pit Show where I interview folks in the tech adjacent *ish space, and we talk about how they do what they do, why they do, and ultimately, hey, can I do as well? We just had Kelly on the show, and she made me start like 5 new podcasts. So maybe you'll see all of those coming to a future Anchor, Spotify. I mean, Apple podcast near you.
Jay, thanks a lot. Good to have you. Jim Ray, where can folks find you?
Who knows? I guess ProView.com. I promise not to piss you off. Or what is it? At ProViewJim on Twitter. There, I will piss you off.
Oh, good. An equal opportunity employer. We appreciate that.
And I don't work for Apple, and I guess I'm never going to.
Not after this.
Not with that attitude, mister.
No. Thank you for being here, Jim. Always good to have you. Warren Sklar, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry you got your first pick stolen, but you recovered.
Not the first time. Thanks for thanks for having me. I hang out with Dave and guys sometimes when they do their thing, but pretty much just lurk around. And it's good to listen to you guys. That's why I come. So thanks for not taking me off the chat, so I can't sneak back in. So
Frank Petrie, thank you as always. It's always good to have your insight.
My insight? Okay.
Well, that's what I call
ever
it
since
anyway.
Ever since Uber got out of podcasting, I now deliver meals for them around town. But you can find me at www.ympnow.com, on Twitter at @fpetrie, and on Instagram at Frankie, PHRANKY. And thank you for having me again.
Thank you, Frank. Mr. Ken Ray, for his first appearance in this format, and I hope it's not his last after this marathon session. Ken, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Chuck. macOS Ken, that's the thing. So at macOS Ken on Twitter or macosken.com, and you can look for that show on Apple Podcast or Overcast or Sidecast, Downcast, whatever the other ones are called. And I also do a show called In a Few Minutes that's off this week because I was off last week. And so,
Felt good, didn't it?
I'm off every week.
It's in a few days this week.
Yeah, I guess so. It could well be. And thanks again, Chuck, for having me on.
Kelly Guimont, thank you for being here. What's going on?
You thank me every time, and I'm surprised every time. Like all of it is changing, so I'm trying to keep track. I don't even know anymore. I'm about to be on some show called In Touch with iOS. Sounds sketchy. No, it's David's show, and I'm excited to do it. It's going to be fun. You can find me over at themacobserver.com, where I do the Mac Observer Daily Observations podcast 5 days a week. You can find Mike Rose and I making each other laugh on the After Show, which is at aftershowpodcast.com. You can occasionally find me over at The Incomparable talking about stuff, usually Star Wars, but sometimes other things. And at The Incomparable, I have my own show called I Want My MCU TV, where we are currently talking about the Falcon and the Winter Snowman. You can find me on Twitter as Verso if you still need to hear me talking.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. Good to have you. Mr. Ginsburg, you got a lot of guts having Kelly on In Touch with iOS.
I do. I really do. Yeah.
It's going to be a two-parter.
Yes, find me at In Touch with iOS at intouchwithios.com. You also can find me on Mac to the Future Go Livecast with Guy and Warren on Wednesday nights on Facebook. You can find me on Fridays at the Mac Show, and you also can find me at the Spearman Chicago Apple Users as president of that Apple User Group here in Chicago, and you can find me on Twitter at DaveG65. Thanks again, as always, for having me, Chuck.
It's always good to have you, David. Last but absolutely not least, he was first coming in. He's last going out. Mr. Guy Serle.
Hey, yeah. Let's see. Podcasts. Mac to the Future, livecast Wednesday nights. MyMac.com podcast for over 11 years, or over 10 years, I'm sorry. Occasionally, Guy's Daily Drive, which is just a crazy concept. I keep doing it anyway. VertShark almost everywhere. MacParrot almost everywhere. Guy at MyMac.com is the email address. And a book that I wrote mostly in Pages, which is called The Maltese Cube. It is a really terrible book, but you can buy it either in Amazon or Apple's book place.
Is that new, Guy?
No. Actually, the story was originally written in 2001, and it's been rewritten several times. And as a matter of fact,
it's on Apple TV, isn't it?
No. Well, I mean, it has recently also been rewritten as an audio play. Mac and Forth helped me write it. Why am I blanking on his name? It doesn't matter. He helped me rewrite the entire story over into a script that can be read, and I keep telling myself I'm going to do something with it, and then apparently things never happen that make it happen. So someday.
Guy Serle, Renaissance man.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, no question.
That's where people wish I was.
Thanks for being here, Guy.
Thank you.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. Again, thank you for joining us, whether you're watching live or whether you're watching in the feeds. I'm cutting these up into bite-sized pieces so you can enjoy them. And I would love to have you join us here on Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, to be part of the chat room and be part of this crazy thing that we call MacVoices Live. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.